Janssen, co-host with Alex from Reporterfy Media. Now, everyone, what we need to look at today is we have some breaking news coming out. We've obviously need to talk about the assassination attempt against the president. Had a lot of questions in the chat already about that. Big headline today, though, is that the UAE has just announced that they will be leaving OPEC starting May 1st. What does this mean for the global oil markets? How is this going to affect things? This is a major story that we're going to need to break down, because honestly, it's going to have a ripple down effect across many facets of the energy sector. What we're also looking at right now is we're looking at Israel, new villages that start actually another invasion, and that they basically claim that Hezbollah is operating in these villages. So they are warning residents to remove themselves from these villages. We know what that means. That means that we are nowhere closer to a peace deal, because one of the big factors that Iran certainly wants is that this war between Israel and Lebanon to stop. So are we close to a deal? Absolutely not. This is a total embarrassment for the Trump administration. We now have Europe as well calling out the Trump administration, saying that they have been absolutely hosed by Iran, and that is an epic failure. Man, there's so much to discuss in today's chat. And let me bring in my co-host, Alex, Reporterfy Media. Alex, how are you today, my friend?
Well, I got to tell you, Cyrus, driving to the studio here, getting that headline across the bow, as I call it, seeing what's happening in the Middle East with OPEC. Who would think OPEC would break up? Well, we're seeing the first cards to fall here, and that is the UAE. It's going to be an interesting segment here. We got lots coming up later on in the program as well. So, Cyrus, waking up in America to this news today, pardon me. What does that tell you when one of the major contributors to OPEC, somebody in the Middle East here, the UAE, is saying, you know what, May 1st, route, it's over. Days away.
What interesting thing, Alex, is earlier this week, or earlier last week, actually, I should say, is I made a video on YouTube discussing the petrodollar and how that is collapsing right now through this Iran war. But one of the things that I actually was researching for this is that during the midst of this chaos right here, the UAE actually signed 24 new trade deals with China just last week. And when you actually look at the head of investment there in the UAE, Alex, he actually said that we need to look at China as a reliable partner for all facets of our economy, and that we actually want to take our sovereign wealth fund and invest with China in terms of technology, innovation, certainly, looking at the oil markets and things like that. So what I'm seeing right now is a continuous theme that we have seen over the last 12 months, and really actually that's been accelerated, in the first few months of 2026. And that is, more countries are shifting to China for more stability. And it's a continuous theme that we've seen. We've talked about this before, Alex. We've seen Canada, the UK, Ireland, South Korea, Spain. The list goes on and on. These countries, they send their prospective leaders to Beijing. They meet directly with Xi Jinping. They sign new trade deals. And as I mentioned in our last stream, Alex, we see a lot of people in these countries are actually now looking at China more favorably than the United States. It's certainly a very difficult time for the United States right now, where Donald Trump continues to drag down the United States reputation. Our reputation across the world is falling. And again, this is, I think, just the latest domino in a series of countries that are shifting closer to China, and more importantly, away from the United States, because of the chaos that has been unleashed in this Middle Eastern, Alex, that honestly, there is nowhere close to getting a deal or any type of closure or peace for this conflict.
Well, I think it's too late for the deal there, Cyrus. If we do the math here, the last container emptied its entire load here on the shores a few days ago. So now we're talking about ships, containers, VLCCs, going at the speed of bicycles. That is the truth. And imagine how long that's going to take to catch up on the supply chain. Earlier today when I was listening to CNBC, they had a few talking heads on there, and something caught my attention where they said, no, this problem's not going to be solved in a quarter, 2 quarters, try 5 years. And there is some truth to that. because we're going to be seeing that this year is not going to be a very good year for farmers. They can't even afford to put fertilizer on their crops. We're going to see low crop yields. That's going to be difficult. There's going to be food shortages. That's going to be difficult. We've seen airlines. I mean, Lufthansa was the first to jump. I say how high, because it's going to be going all the way through the entire airline sector. And this will make the pandemic actually look like a picnic. Now, we just look at that from the economic front, and how much that's going to cost the average person. Again, the oil and gas prices will continue to rise. Dated Brent today is trading at about a 25 to 35% premium of what you see on the paper trades through the CME right now. So it's going to continue to flow, and it's going to be very difficult. Even if tomorrow morning the Trump administration said, okay, we're fine, deal's on, everybody kiss and make up, not happening. The financial markets are about to see the day of reckoning coming, and I'm ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that we've been calling for a long time, Alex. And I got to just say it's an honor to share the studio with you, and be able to put out these reports. I really enjoy this, and what we need to do is, I think what we have a great passion for trying to break through the media here. What we're trying to create with this show is to give you guys the information that you need, that you're not going to see elsewhere. Now, the key thing here, Alex, we mentioned this in our live stream over the weekend. The Wall Street Journal and mainstream media, they're just now reporting that the United States military bases have in fact been hit. We knew that weeks ago. Basically, the first few days of the war, we saw this happening. We invited guests on, they broke that down. But again, you see this huge delay. This is why it's important to get your sources from independent media. Alex just brought up a good thing. I want to bring up that graph right now that is going to show us a very interesting thing here, guys. This is the cost of fertilizer, okay? This is the cost of fertilizer right now. And look at what has happened in this market over the last couple of months, basically from the start of the year. Let's just say the start of the year, around $380. Now that has more than doubled. And I want to just kind of read you guys a report that I was reading. U.S. farm bankruptcies surged 46%. That's bankruptcies of farmers in the United States as fertilizer costs squeeze the farmers. The American Farm Bureau Federation reported 315 Chapter 12 bankruptcy filings in 2025, up from 216 in 2024, and the third consecutive annual increase. Now, I'm going to pause there because one thing we have to remember, Donald Trump campaigned for farmers. This is his big push, right? He's all about the blue-collar worker. He's all about giving jobs back to middle America. Alex, another big thing, we always talk about China, is we look at the soybean deal, right? Soybean farmers were absolutely crushed in the United States because of a tariff war that Donald Trump launched. And this is the key thing why you and I, Alex, why we always preach to have a win-win partnership. We're learning to work with other countries. China said, guys, we don't need to buy your soybeans. We have our BRICS country, Brazil, great partner, great trading partner. They produce a lot of great quality soybeans. We're just going to buy from them if you're going to launch a ridiculous tariff war against us. But who gets crushed, Alex? It's going to be the middle-class Americans, the rural farmers. So the Midwest got hit the hardest with 121 filings. That's a 70% increase. The Southeast followed with 105, up 69%. Together, these two regions accounted for more than 2/3 of every farm bankruptcy in the United States. Fertilizer prices are now pouring gasoline onto the fire. And this is urea, which is the most widely used nitrogen fertilizer on the planet, has increased 87% year to date and now trades near $720 a ton. And this is for our farm growers, our farmers that, not our corn growers, not farm growers, the corn farmers. They depend on nitrogen. This is a dire situation. So again, Alex, I just want to go back to, our last stream. We had called this, we had talked about the Strait of Hormuz. Basically, obviously everyone thinks about oil. We're watching the price of oil now nearing $110 again, guys. We told you that it was going to go up. But the key thing that I mentioned last time was also fertilizer. 30% of the world's fertilizer going through the Strait of Hormuz. We said this is going to cause a massive price increase in the food, but also we're looking at shortages. And Alex, I mean, that report, coming out, this is from a hedge fund company that I was reading off of. That is a very dire situation for, again, kind of the lifeline of American society, our farmers, our rural workers, our blue collar workers. Unbelievable situation, Alex.
I need to correct you one more time. We are always quoting paper oil, paper future contracts. And my friend, I know you're in the United States there, and I don't want to send shockwaves over to you there from China. But if we can pull up this link here, the average person, when they log into their trading screen, they'll see oil on CNBC, and it will say 99.96, okay, or US crude tops $100. That is not spot. That is not deliverable. That is not unloading of the oil after refineries. We are talking a 30 to 40% premium on that oil as we speak. And as the United States has burned through 200 million barrels of its reserves, it's going to continue to burn through them until they're out. And that took decades to build. So this is going to be a very interesting next 30 to 60 days. But I'm going to caution people for a moment here, because of course I put out the warning signs about this financial market here, and it's justifiably so. I feel to be responsible here, I have to make people aware that, having 20 years here in the derivatives market, I can pretty much anticipate what's going on in the stock market before it actually happens. That's the beauty about derivatives. Now, there are going to be some exceptional plays in the market here. There will be. We have seen a spectacular year for silver. Silver has been absolutely amazing in the last calendar year. Gold's been amazing. A lot of these commodities have been spectacular. And some of these are the metals that people go to for safety. We're also going to see that there could potentially be a rare earth situation coming up here in China. And I think, Cyrus, you have done a lot of research on that. You've talked about it many times on this show. I mean, tell our listeners about rare earth and why it's so important. Most people don't realize it. They just think, oh, maybe it's rare. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, that's something that we've covered a lot on both of our channels over the last year. But I mean, the interesting thing with rare earths, and what I want people to understand, is that rare earths are not actually that rare. That's just simply the name of them. So they are very plentiful around the world. I mean, you can go to Australia, you can go to Canada, the United States. I mean, a lot of these minerals are available. The key thing is the processing. How do you actually take that mineral and process it to a point where you can actually use it in some of the most advanced industries in the world? China right now, that has a tremendous hold on the actual high level processing. They can get it to like a 99.9% purity, which is what you need. Interesting enough, we actually are going to be bringing on a guest later on in today's stream. That's going to be coming on in about 45 minutes. We have a special guest speaker. Very excited to bring him in because he's an expert in this realm. We're going to bring him in for that full analysis. But Alex, I want to kind of go back to this really important thing, because I had a lot of questions coming in regarding the scenes that were unfolding at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We've now seen, the messaging from the right side right now is that Donald Trump is, the true patriot. He's the savior of the country. His life has been attacked, 3 times now. But I really would like to play with you an interesting clip, and I'm going to actually bring this one up right here, because I think this one. So I think this clip is honestly it has been blowing up on social media. It is by far the best explanation of the situation that I have personally seen, and it really kind of lets people understand what's going on in America right now. Before we play this clip, just I want everybody to know, a lot of people are speculating that this assassination attempt was potentially staged. Maybe it was fake. What is the truth about this? The interesting thing here, Alex, I don't know if you noticed this, but in the last 48 hours, there seems to be a lot of people in the United States that are genuinely not caring about this event. And I'm going to explain why that is. And so let's go ahead and play this clip. This is about a 2.5-minute clip. It's absolutely fantastic. Let's give it a listen.
We do have breaking news out of Washington, D.C.
No one cares. That's the real story here. Literally, no one cares. Everyone thinks this is fake. Because of course they do. Because everything is fake. Everything is spectacle and theatrics, which isn't a new thing in the world of politics and media, but the laziness and lack of seriousness with which this circus of an administration is operating has certainly made apathy a mainstream response to it. I mean, he bombed a girls' school in Iran and hasn't owned up to it yet. Of course no one cares that someone allegedly tried to off him. He teamed up with a genocidal maniac to start a war that will not only cost thousands of lives, it will also collapse the entire world economy. For no reason. Why would we care? He has rolled back every conceivable protection for the environment and keeps spreading anti-science propaganda so his friends can make a little bit more money. Why would we care about yet another half-assed assassination attempt? He has done all in his power to destroy the entire Western world order and strengthened Russia and China in the process. Oh no, someone tried to shoot the president again. Just as his poll numbers are tanking. Oh no, what a coincidence. Everything he touches, everyone he surrounds himself with, are fake. Fake lips, fake tits, fake gold, fake pools, fake Bible verses, for crying out loud. False promises to voters, false prophets in his cabinet, false flags for the cameras, and if I may say so, a somewhat subpar acting from the cast this time.
I just want to go find Suzanne.
What a great idea, Erica. You should go home and stay there. No one cares anymore. And maybe that's the point, I don't know. Not to convince you of anything, not to win, just to make reality so exhausting. So exhausting to hold on to that we just give in and play along. Or maybe it's just a sad attempt at getting support and funding for his ridiculous ballroom. It's probably, that's probably it, yeah. This is the end of news.
Alex, let me get your reactions to that video. I thought that was so important. I wanted to play that for us in today's live stream. Your thoughts?
You know, you asked me a couple of years ago, I would say that's 100% fiction. But some of that is, you know, it's resonating through my brain right now. And it really makes me think that, you know, we are in quite a time where nothing does feel real anymore. I mean, why would we go and completely destroy a country in the Middle East? On a hunch? Maybe we were bored. Maybe he's bored. I don't know. You know, I've run out of excuses for this guy. And trying to really understand, you know, taking a president out of his bed in the middle of the night in Venezuela and one of the soldiers betting on Polymarket on that capture. I mean, what is going on in the United States of America? Because just about every headline kind of doesn't really sound believable anymore. And I think it really feels, Cyrus, that that guy that made that, he's probably going to have to do a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because it will continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, Alex, I think it really hit the nail on the head. And I think if you saw the caption on the left there, if you were reading that, you know, it says it is quite amazing, you know, whether you believe it was true or not, right? Let's just say, you know, if you believe the assassination attempt was a genuine attempt, or if this was an entirely staged thing to help Donald Trump, you know, in his poll numbers, or maybe it was an elaborate scheme to finally get this ballroom built. Just so people have the context there, Donald Trump is building a $400 million ballroom that is largely seen as, you know, kind of a legacy project for Trump, right? It's his way to basically be able to brand something and have, hey, the Trump ballroom that I put on that I built in 2026. It's his legacy that he gets to leave at the White House. And for Donald Trump, he says we need it for security reasons because, we need a secure place to hold venues. I can't understand that because, we're dealing with the United States president, obviously the most organized, costly, efficient security detail in the entire world. You're trying to tell me that, wherever the president is at any time in the world, he's going to be kept, have a very high level of security. But I mean, again, it just seems very interesting. You did see immediately following this event, almost in unison, all of these Republican, politicians, almost typing the same thing on Twitter. This is why we need a ballroom. Pass the ballroom. Pass the ballroom. And so, but I think what you saw there on the caption there, Alex, is said, I think this is the beginning of the end of this cult. And I think that people are really just starting to call BS on this. And, we're sick and tired of the lies. We're sick and tired of just the failed campaign promises. And like you said, I think you had a really good response to that. What are we doing? Is he bored? Are we just simply doing this because of a hunch? Which Donald Trump said as well earlier, right? Remember last month, he said, why did you attack Iran? Well, I had a feeling. I had a feeling they were going to do something. So, we had to strike first. And what's very sad about this is another point that he had mentioned is he said, he keeps spouting this anti-science propaganda, removing the United States from so many different trade deals, from so many different international organizations. Meanwhile, China has once again, kept all of its promises. China is working on reducing and becoming a carbon neutral country. We see this, and this is actually a really important thing for China because when we talk about oil, we talk about energy, we talk about the energy needed to power your economy. This was a decision that China went forward with 25 years ago, Alex, shifting to renewable energy. You and I have covered that extensively. Obviously, the high-speed rails, the power dams, the solar, the wind, the turbines, all of this stuff. This has been a strategic investment from China. And like you said in the video, these moves are simply just making China stronger. It's actually remarkable, but I think what really strikes me here, Alex, is, an assassination attempt against the president. That should be a major story that's just dominating. But so many people here in America, they're just over it. That just shows you how much Donald Trump has lost because it's just like, oh my God, every day is a circus. It's literally just an absolute clown show. And I think people are so burnt out, so fed up. They have reached a tipping point where even that, it's like, it's not even believable. And honestly, we don't even care. They really don't care. And that's where we are right now in this conflict, Alex. It's remarkable.
Well, if we go back a few years ago and we look at the administration, I thought there was hope. I really thought there was hope that America would be great again. America would have its golden years. America has a president in the White House that is about business. I mean, all one has to do is just see what happened in China here this last weekend at the China 2026 auto show. There was something remarkably missing from that auto show, and it's called General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis. I didn't see any of these people selling any cars there to the 900,000 people that got on airplanes and went to the show in Beijing. Now, all of those people are not just your average Joe looking for a car. I was talking with a gentleman from the United Kingdom. I said, what brings you here? He says, well, I'm at the CATL booth. And it's a guy, from the UK. And I thought, okay, what's this guy know about CATL? CATL, for the audience, is one of the largest battery manufacturers for new energy vehicles in the world. BYD comes in second, I would believe, but CATL is a name that is dominating in the battery and R&D phase here in China. Now, he was from an insurance company in the United Kingdom, and he says, we're getting ready. We're getting ready for these cars to come. I wanted to talk to the largest battery manufacturer because we insure these cars, and this is the most expensive component that goes into the cars. And I sat there and said, wow, okay, this is interesting. Starting to see that pre-planning. And again, Trump has and maybe still has enough credibility to get over here, do some great deals that would be great for his nation, Of course, it's a win-win when China, and I always call you, the ambassador. What's the name I call you, Cyrus? The ambassador of peace.
Ambassador of peace, my friend.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And trying to hold these nations together here. Trust me, there is an opportunity for America here. It's not about, big bad China selling these cars, dumping them. We hear this, they're reducing the prices to, over capacity. Give me a break. This country, it's spent billions of dollars on R&D on these automobiles. They drive the streets. I take them every day. They are very reliable and they're very cost efficient. That's why we're not seeing a lot of surprises at the pump here, because most people are driving new energy vehicles. I know it's hard for the viewers to understand that, but that is a reality here in China.
It was really interesting. I saw a video this week on Twitter. It was actually a Chinese billionaire who was taking the subway in Beijing. And, somebody had a really interesting perspective. He said, it's not about how many poor people are able to afford cars, but it's actually the opposite. How many billionaires and wealthy people are using public transportation? That shows you how developed and how advanced the society is, because, you'll see that in Hong Kong as well. Many wealthy people take the public transportation because it's incredibly efficient. And honestly, in a city like Beijing, it's much faster to take public transportation, like the metros, which are world-class, fantastic, run on time, clean, efficient, smooth. Some of the most advanced metro stations and train stations that you'll find anywhere in the world. But, Alex, I want to, and this is what we're seeing right now, right? We're seeing China, it being so advanced in all this thing. And to be honest, this is a trending story that's been happening for the last 2 years as more and more people are discovering China, and, travel vloggers are going there. And a lot of Americans are really questioning this, Alex. They're saying, why can't we have this stuff here? And I've got a very interesting clip I want to play for everybody here. Let's go ahead and roll this next clip.
Yeah, I remember seeing this. I was watching it just earlier.
Yeah, this is a really good clip for everybody.
Ask you a question, how much does it matter what Americans think?
Well, it matters every bit what Americans think. That's why Americans vote. It's why Americans have the opportunity to have free speech. We want them to have that.
Okay, so what percentage of Americans support a war with Iran?
I don't know. Do you know?
I do. I think it's around, I saw the numbers yesterday, I think it was like 21%.
Okay.
Is that enough to have a war with Iran?
We don't live in a world where you have a poll taken to find out whether our policy should be a particular direction. Because
I thought you just said that
that's
we
direct
vote.
Democracy. No, we care deeply about it. But on the other hand, do we make the decisions of foreign policy and even domestic policy based on
we
what
care
the
deeply
latest
about
poll
it in
number
what
is?
sense? If we're ignoring it, then in what sense do we, quote, care deeply about it?
Well, I think we care deeply when we see there's a threat.
No, but about Americans' opinions. So you've got 350 million Americans. Yeah. They voted in this last election on the basis, in part, of the promise no more wars. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now we're about to have a war, looks like. 80% of people are against it. In that range, let's say 70%, but nowhere near majority support for this war. And it's not direct democracy, but it is a form of democracy. It's representative democracy.
The ultimate form of democracy in our system, in a republic, because we're not a true democracy, we're a republic.
Exactly, right? It's a mediated democracy.
It'll be an opportunity for Americans to vote if they think that we've made the wrong policy decisions. I personally think the president is making the right policy decisions.
But I guess, but you just said it matters deeply what Americans think, and if the overwhelming majority are against it, in what sense does it matter? Because what I hear is it matters what they think, but it really doesn't matter what they think because...
No, you take it in, you certainly ingest that.
And then what do you do with it once you ingest it?
Then you make sure that you have... No,
you just gotta... It goes out the other end, obviously. No.
Alex, I don't think you could find a better clip that really describes the U.S. government's hypocrisy than that one right there. Now, just for some context, everybody, that is Mike Huckabee, who is the American ambassador to Israel. And he has said and gone on the record that he believes that Israel should control all of the Middle East. He said, I would be fine with Israel taking over and just controlling the whole region. They should be able to do whatever they want because they're Israel. You know, they're God's chosen people. We're their strong ally. We're going to always support them. And so I think what you see here, I mean, again, this is remarkable because it is a direct hypocrisy. But what's amazing is I don't think he initially understood what he was actually admitting, right? How much does it matter what Americans, it matters every bit. That's the whole point of a democracy. This is why we vote, Tucker. We want to make sure that people's decisions are being respected and held up. This is what should lead the decisions of our government. Well, great. 80% don't want to go to war with Iran. Well, sorry, we don't live in a society where we let public opinion dictate our decisions. I'm sorry, what? You just contradicted yourself. You literally just said the opposite. And so again, this is, and you can see Mike Huckabee, who just said, we're certainly going to take that information in. I mean, it's great. Basically, I understand that 80% of Americans do not want a war with Iran. So we've taken that in. Thank you for sharing your opinion with us. We're now going to do the complete opposite, because why? I work for Israel. I work for Israel, and it's remarkable. And again, this is what, what is it? For the people, by the people, our government is supposed to represent the we just do not have any shred of that. And again, this is why a lot of people are actually, I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to just call a spade a spade. A lot of people are looking at China. You and I have documented this where, in China, if you were walking down the street and there's a pothole in the middle, dial 12345. That is a number that you can call anywhere in China. They say, what's your problem? Hey, I'm at the corner of this street and this street. There's a pothole here. I think this is a safety hazard. It is required by Chinese law that you get an answer to that, right? Now you might not always get that resolved, but they're going to have to provide you an answer with that. Within 24 hours, they go and inspect it, and then they give you an answer. Okay, this is not a priority. We don't agree with you. But at least you get an answer, right? You can actually call the government, get an answer from them. But more times than not, they realize, oh, wow, there's a pothole in the middle of the sidewalk, and they fix it. They fix it within 48 hours. And there's real change. And that's where I think a lot of Chinese people are actually very optimistic about their future, because you have a government that actually is prioritizing the needs of its citizens, what it wants to accomplish. And, I'm just reached a tipping point here in the United States where I'm so fed up, Alex, with the politicians, the lies that they say, the nonsense that they're doing, and I think what we're seeing right now is we're just seeing a major crumbling happen, in the United States with our political system. The Republican Party is going down in flames. This is honestly the MAGA cult, and let's call it what it is. It is a cult, if you're still believing this MAGA message, because America is not getting great again. We are losing friends across the globe. Our economy is in the toilet. And, Donald Trump is literally just interested in, how can I enrich the pocketbooks of my wealthy donors, and how can I keep Israel happy? And it is a sad time for America, especially when you see a clip like this. This is not a government official that serves his citizens.
Not at all. And I think, let's have a vote, right? Cyrus, let's have a vote. Let's look in the comment section. Here's how the vote's going to be. Vote 1 if we should move Mike Huckabee to Israel. Vote 2 if you think he should stay in the United States of America. So for the first 100 people to comment, if it's more than 50%, Mike's got to go, right? Hey, we voted for it. We should be okay for that. What I'm tired of is when I'm tired of hearing the administration be so irresponsible to say, we're going to win. Are you winning? Are you 55 million Americans without health care winning? Are you winning in your wonderful train stations and your beautiful airports and your massive prices at the gas pump going on? Is that winning? Is that really winning for people? Cyrus, I want so bad for the United States to win. Seriously win. It's a nation that for many years was a role model to me growing up as a young kid in Canada. I always went down to the United States border, saw the flying stars and stripes, and said, wow, what a country. And that excitement was there. And I thought, and that's what I was promised, even though we can't vote in the U.S. elections, but as a neighbor to the United States, we have supported that economy. Yes, we have. We are big supporters of that U.S. economy until somebody said, we don't give a shit about agreements. We don't care about what relationship we had there. A matter of fact, if you don't like it, we're going to make you the 51st state of America. And while we're at it, let's cruise on over to Greenland. Let's take that too. Let's send J.D. Vance and his wife over there. They can wave a couple of flags. The Danish people will welcome them and like that. And then while we're at it, let's send Jared Kushner, the son of Charles Kushner, who was a convicted felon that was pardoned by the United States president. Let's send them over to negotiate in Iran. And what happens when you sit down at a table with Jared Kushner? Look at your watch, because 48 hours, you're a dead man. And that's what happens. So these are the clowns that we have running the United States. I'm looking now at my screen. It's just gone. Well, Cyrus, you could just see what. How's the vote? Is Mike going to be sticking around in the U.S.?
Well, I mean, again, as we've seen in that clip, vote doesn't matter, because you can vote for whatever you want. We're going to take that information, and then, like Tucker Carlson said, it just goes out the other end. Basically meaning it's just going right in the trash can, because simply don't care. The U.S. government officials are going to move on what their policies are. An amazing clip that really understands that, Alex. Let's play this next clip. We can get some better context on this.
Just to your point about the president believing that Iran was a house of cards that just needed one swift push to collapse, where did he get that idea?
He could only have gotten that idea from Benjamin Netanyahu. That's it. Because the CIA analysis has been consistent over the course of decades. We can't just fire a couple of rockets and take down a government in a country of 93 million people. That's just not the way real life works. They're going to rally around their leadership because we're outsiders.
So again, when you have that clip of Mike Huckabee, who basically has pledged his loyalty to Israel, he serves Israel before he serves the United States. Then you say, and again, there was actually a very good Wall Street Journal article, Alex, talking about why Donald Trump went there. And this was an interesting one. February 11th, okay, this is about, 15, 16 days before Trump launched his war. That's when Benjamin Netanyahu arrived in Washington, D.C. Now, normally when a political leader, comes from another country to the White House, they're greeted on the White House lawn. There's a big photo opportunity. The media's there. They go to the press center, and they have all of these questions. You've seen this. They'll then go to the Oval Office. They'll sit down with reporters. You always get these great photo shots of for example, Netanyahu and Donald Trump sitting at the Oval Office. And remember earlier with the Ukraine war, for example, all of the European leaders were gathered around Trump's desk in the Oval Office. You had a tremendous amount of photos and video footage from that event. But February 11th was different, Alex, because February 11th, Donald Trump escorted Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House's Situation Room. Now, it is very unusual for a foreign leader to be in the Situation Room. That room is dedicated exclusively to the United States president and his top military advisors. It is a room that they are using to discuss the top level military actions of the government. They go into that room. Benjamin Netanyahu takes the head of the table. Okay, I mean, this is amazing, right? Imagine, like, Alex, this is equivalent to you saying to me, Cyrus, I would like you to come over for Christmas dinner to my house. I come into your house and I sit at the head of the table and I start carving the turkey. And I start saying, hey, Alex, would you like some of this turkey? And you're all of a sudden thinking, dude, you're in my house. Okay, hold on. Why are you at the head of the table? Why is the carving knife in your hand? And why are you putting turkey on my plate? You're in my house, Alex. But no, that's what Benjamin Netanyahu did. He essentially did a 1-hour PowerPoint presentation, and he basically said to Trump, hey, there's never been a better time to strike Iran. They're going to have no ability to close the Strait of Hormuz. Within a couple of weeks, we can basically knock out every single, all their entire military capacity. We can knock it out in about 2 weeks, guys. So give us about 2 weeks of war. They're going to be completely neutralized. They'll have no ability to close down the strait. So don't worry about oil prices and potential global recession based on this. They're also going to have no military capability. So don't worry about them attacking U.S. military bases in the region. Don't worry about them attacking other Gulf states. None of that's going to happen. And again, like this clip shows, our CIA analysis said none of this is true. Hey. Actually, this is not happening. But what does Trump say? All of a sudden, he gets an idea in his head. Great, I could totally knock out Iran in the span of about a couple of weeks. Hey, I just came off this great win in Venezuela, right? We were able to swoop in there, capture Maduro. Launch. It was a couple of days. Bing, bam, boom. We're out of there. Maduro's in a prison cell in New York. Guys, I think this is the same game plan. It's going to be a little bit longer. It's not going to be a couple days. It'll be maybe 2 weeks, but 2 weeks maximum, we're out. And this is where the United States got the idea. So February 11th, Netanyahu was in the White House Situation Room at the head of the table, delivering this note to Donald Trump. He took the bait. He went there. And now he is stuck in the escalation trap, Alex. He has no way to pivot out. Iran has responded remarkably. And I mean, it's just shocking. Here we are, coming up on May, we're going to be entering next week will be the 10th week of the war. I mean, we have no one from the United States government's going over to Iran. As I mentioned at the earlier of the stream, which we will get into, UAE now announces on May 1st, they're leaving OPEC. Massive deal that's going to change the oil markets in the future. But again, we just see there's no strategy, no plan, nothing right now. Iran has the cards. Donald Trump has nothing in his hand.
Cyrus, I want to ask you a question.
Please.
Do you know why UAE is leaving OPEC?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. Number one is they don't want to be, they're probably going to try to increase their oil capacity and do a deal with China. It would be my biggest, guess at this point. But I'd like to hear your analysis.
I think that's pretty accurate. The other one is, as you say, their commitments. They have oil delivery commitments. And they have just seen one of their largest protectors basically leave them wide open. Now, here's the problem. They're going to have a deliverable problem here, not just because of the Strait of Hormuz, but also when it comes to refineries. A lot of the infrastructure has been damaged that we are unaware of right now. We're not seeing that. We're still not seeing it on our television screens. But the Middle East has been, for better words, bombed, bankrupt, and bashed in the last 10 weeks. Now, the issue here is they're the first to jump. And I think we are going to see other nations get into order here very quick and jump too. And this will also escalate tensions between the United States, who feel that they have this whole region lock and loaded. No problem. We got the GCC countries in our bag. No problem. Send Jared over there, the Undertaker, get him to walk around, do a dog and pony show with the Iranians, but we got it under control. No, that is a big headline, everybody. That is a huge headline that Cyrus has been talking about here, that this is going to have an impact. And when you pull the UAE out of the OPEC, who else is going to come out of OPEC? There might be new stipulations here. And as Cyrus has said many times on this program, and you've talked about BRICS in many videos, currency is going to be at the front of it all. And the U.S. currency no longer reigns supreme in the Strait of Hormuz. It is the Chinese renminbi. And that currency is going to be a currency that I think UAE, exactly what you said, Cyrus, is going to switch to. And they are going to probably do a massive deal with China because now is the time. Why not? Well, your airports have been bombed. Why not? Your tourism sector has been bombed. Why not? When your airports, your airlines has been grounded, losing billions of dollars. I think it was $100 million Emirates Airlines loses a day during that whole fiasco. And what? We're going to get the reputation of those nations back? It's game over. Thank you, United States of America. But these containers, they're going to be rolling on to China. And watch for a huge pipeline agreement coming up here soon. But Cyrus, you nailed it on the head, sir. Right on.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I mean, This is an interesting one. We discussed this with the birth of the petro yuan. And the interesting thing here, guys, is, something that I covered very early was the digital currency that China has launched. I started making videos on that probably about 4 or 5 years ago, right at the very beginning of this YouTube channel, about the digital yuan. And that's what's being used right now. China has created its own payment system. It's called KIPS. They're able to transact in that. There's actually a tremendous amount of banks around the world that are taking part of that. And the simple thing is that this is, China has quietly built a pipeline, the infrastructure needed to facilitate these payments. Again, I started covering this about 4 or 5 years ago on this YouTube channel, talking about this, and they were preparing for the future, knowing that the renminbi is going to have a much more important role in the international world. I have an amazing clip I want to share with you. It's from the great professor John Mearsheimer, and it really talks about, what has the United States accomplished in the strategically over the last 2 months. So let's go ahead and play this clip so everybody can understand.
You want to remember, we came into this war with 4 big demands. They had to do away with their nuclear enrichment capability completely. They had to stop supporting the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah. They had to get rid of their missiles. And furthermore, there was going to be regime change. Those were the big 4 demands, the most important of which I believe was regime change. Because if you got regime change, then in their story, you could achieve the other 3 goals. But those were the big 4 goals. We have failed on all 4 counts. You just don't want to lose sight of this. We have failed to achieve any of those goals. And in fact, one could argue, Chris, that we have made the situation worse. In terms of missiles, it would seem to me that the major lesson that the Iranians should take from this conflict is that they should build lots of missiles, lots of launchers, and hide them in missile cities. In terms of the nuclear issue, one could argue that if anything, they should have learned that what they need is nuclear weapons. And this could be pushing them further in that direction. And then there's the whole question of the Strait of Hormuz. And it's important to emphasize that in addition to failing to achieve our 4 objectives, we're now in a situation where the Iranians control the Strait of Hormuz and have a toll booth inserted in it, which did not exist on February 27th. And this is likely to remain in place. It's hard for me to imagine them giving up the toll booth or giving up control of the strait. Maybe they will, because they'll get some other goodies in the deal that is worked out. But we have failed here. This has been a colossal blunder.
Kudos to the great political scientist there, John Mearsheimer, who always speaks the truth. But it is remarkable there, right? 4 main goals, 0 achieved. And the last bit of that tweet, this is a masterclass in strategic failure. We look at, for example, the regime change. That was the number one thing that was said. Day one, right? The goal here is regime change. Day one of the war, we killed the supreme leader. And Donald Trump famously came on Twitter and said, "This is your time. Iranian people, rise up. Your opportunity is here. Go ahead and establish a new government." Right? That's how it works. You're just going to magically snap your fingers and what a democracy is going to come about. It doesn't happen. And Alex, the most important, crucial information that we need to understand here is that over the past 100 years, there has never been a situation where we've launched an air campaign, bombed a country, and that has resulted in a successful regime change. It doesn't happen. Like you've said, it actually galvanizes the people. It hardens the people and makes the people realize that the United States is not their friend. And what happens? They double down on support. And like John Mearsheimer said, from the case of Iran, if you're looking at Iran, why wouldn't you want to develop more missiles? Why wouldn't you want to, work towards a nuclear bomb? Because that is the thing that ultimately does grant you some peace and some the ability to survive. We know that Israel, for example, has nuclear capabilities, but we look at Pakistan, right? No one talks about Pakistan. It has nuclear weapons. We look at North Korea. No one's messing with North Korea because they obviously have nuclear weapons. And so again, I think that you've done the complete opposite here. I think you've galvanized the people. I think that you've hardened them. And, I want to give a huge thank you to Trevor Norman, who's a big, longtime supporter of the show, has blessed us with some super chats this morning. But he said a really good tweet here, or a little message here. He said, the Lego movies tell more truth than the Orange Idiot. And if you've seen those Lego movies, they're absolutely epic. I got to be honest, I'm pretty impressed by the Iran's ability to troll the United States government and the speed that they're able to make these videos. But when they debut a Lego video, it is trending on Twitter. It is all over social media. But again, you see a colossal failure here. I just honestly can't understand how anybody in the Trump administration, looking at this conflict 9 weeks in, could say that anything has really been achieved here. And when I talk to MAGA influencers, and I talk to MAGA politicians, and people that I'm kind of debating in these talk shows that I go on, it's always the best one is the childhood fable of the emperor in the new clothes, Alex. It's always these guys they're staying in line with their king and basically saying, no, the king is wearing a noble outfit. He looks splendid in his grand outfit. But yet there's a little boy on the side of the street that says, hey, mom, the king's naked. He's not wearing anything, and so again, it's you talk to these MAGA influencers, and they have to spin everything in the way that glorifies the king, who, by the way, basically shared an image of him as Jesus, saying that I am here to save the people, reincarnates himself as Jesus, is caught in a lie, completely blows up. It got so bad here in the United States because obviously a tremendous amount of Trump supporters are evangelical Christians that, certainly believe in Jesus. And that was blasphemy. It was a complete effort. It was a complete blasphemy from the United States president, who has really alienated a lot of, Christians that have been so loyal to the Republican Party. Not only that, he then doubles down and starts a Twitter battle with the Pope. Great way to alienate, hundreds of millions of Catholics across the world. Actually, billions, I should say. There's definitely more than a billion Catholics in the world. So all of a sudden, now you're attacking the first American Pope, and his message of trying to, establish peace and trying to find a way for the world to work together. It is, it's just shocking. I mean, it honestly is just shocking where we are in this war. But again, leave it to Mearsheimer and his incredible bluntness about the reality of the situation.
It's going to be an interesting next quarter on the financial markets, and I really think that people have to sit down and have a look of how important listening to these programs are, Cyrus. I mean, we listened to George Galloway. He has an outstanding program. We listened to Colonel McGregor, Scott Ritter, all these people that have helped give their insights to geopolitical tensions has, I think, for most part, calmed the public down. Now, if we're going to get out of this mess, this is going to require some heavy lifting. And that's from the government of the United States, has to pipe down a bit here and let this earth heal from, can you imagine? Mr. Trump has only been there for a year. Who knows what this is going to be like in year 2? Maybe he'll get a reality check at the midterms there. And year 3 and 4, I just cannot fathom where we're going with that, because we're hearing Cuba. Maybe they're going to give him some time there. We're hearing Colombia. We're hearing Greenland. I know people might think that's a joke, but I think he's quite serious about it. And we're hearing some tensions with Canada. So at the end of the day here, I think the average American needs to pay close attention on what's going on with the stock market. Not just because it's about, checks and balances and making money and when to buy and when to sell. You really have to research what companies are connected to oil. Lots of them are. Whether it's farming, fertilizer, helium, as Cyrus has said on this program. It's extremely important that the average person takes that time now to really try to get to the bottom of how much of an impact oil is going to play in their life. And I have seen it here In China, we are starting to see a small rise in some of the petrol prices, not too much, but we're seeing it definitely in Southeast Asia. We've seen it in Thailand. We've seen it in Sri Lanka. We've seen it in the Philippines. It's starting to come here now. And unless something happens in the next week or so, then the shit's really going to hit the fan here, Cyrus.
Yeah, Alex, I want to give you the floor here. We're about 5 minutes from bringing our guest in. I want to know a little bit about for like retail investors. I'm seeing a lot of people in our chat saying, Alex, can you kind of give us? Is there a way to play the oil markets right now? Is there? I don't want to put you on the spot and say,
no problem.
Give us a firm plan, but I want you to kind of just talk about this a little bit from the stock market and what we can look at for the future here. I think you're the man for that question.
Javi, this is very complex because we've seen the American government get involved in this. We've seen the trader-in-chief get involved with this in market manipulation for the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, not saying him directly, but either somebody knows that he's about to put out a tweet, they're trading on that. There is a massive investigation on that. Now, that is not a criminal investigation, that is a civil investigation. But if we're going to put all that aside and try to understand on how we can protect ourselves against oil, it could be, there are many, many opportunities for people in this market. Now, of course, I trade derivatives. I don't like owning shares of stocks, period. I like to trade on the derivatives market. It gives me the flexibility to, in sense, basically say, okay, I'm going to ensure that the market doesn't go down X, Y, or Z. Now, if the market doesn't go down X, Y, or Z in the next couple of weeks, I've got my premium. It's like when you go and get a car insurance each year, you say, I want to buy car insurance for a year. Okay, at the end of the year, when you were not in an accident, the insurance company calls, they don't give you the money back, but they renew the insurance. So that's what we call the derivatives and option market. Now, you need to get yourself educated about that. There's many ways to educate and understand how to trade the derivatives market. I say to people out there, anybody that wants to drop me an email, go to my YouTube channel. You'll find my email on there. I'll set you in the right direction. When it comes to now looking for companies, listen to a lot of these programs. Watch guys like Peter Schiff. Great guy, wealth of knowledge. He's called the gold market. He's called the housing market. I mean, these are the type of guys that we need to tune into. The cheerleaders on CNBC is one thing. They will window dress whatever they want on the market. The other things that you guys can do here is keep tuning into this show. You will understand that when we are dissecting certain parts of geopolitics, that ends up coming onto the market. Now, I know it's difficult to understand how you can make money in a market that's going to be going down. It is possible in the option and derivatives market. On the shares market, a little bit more complicated. As I say, 99.9% of the people out there are trading, buying, and selling stocks. And not to say that that's something that you shouldn't do. I think it's an amazing thing to actually get into the market. It's just that everybody is protecting themselves in certain ways. I've traded derivatives for 20 years. But Cyrus, to end it off here, I think that, in this last year here, people really need to understand that how much this administration impacts certain things. We have seen massive rises in commodities. Out of nowhere, gold is over 4,000 an ounce. Why? I think the average person is understanding when they were told years ago by people like Peter Schiff, hey, this day is about to come. And guess what, Cyrus? It has come. We are in it right now. So we are also in it with other things and other metals. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Cyrus, and we can chat a little bit more about that. I think we have an expert coming in here that might be able to help us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and bring our guest in. Very honored to welcome into the show, Mr. Craig Perry. Craig, thank you so much for joining our live stream today. Now, Craig, you and I had a chance to spend some time together. I actually had a chance to fly up to British Columbia, Canada. Great to see you again. How are you this morning?
Fantastic. Good to see you, Cyrus. Great to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're talking about the shocks of the Iran war. I mean, obviously, we're looking at the oil markets here. Craig, you're the CEO of Vizsla Copper. I had a chance to go up there, spend some time with you on that project, learn about that. But I mean, we talked a little bit about gold, silver. I mean, these have been amazing assets over the last 12 months. But I'd like to kind of bring you in for a market analysis and just kind of understand from your perspective. You've been one of the most successful miners in Canada. Tremendous amount of success. I think you've been to mine projects in like 60 different countries. And a tremendous amount of wealth and knowledge. Just would like to get your kind of take on things as we're looking at this period of kind of global. Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. I think I've worked 70 countries. The companies that I've built now worth about $25 billion. So yeah, we've got a lot of experience. Someone mentioned to me the other day that, in this new sort of paradigm of deglobalization, if you haven't traveled, if you haven't interacted with other cultures in other countries, you really probably don't know what's going on. So, people have got to get out and have a look around, I think. But there's some very interesting things happen. I came in just then hearing that, talk about the gold price. I think we're going to see much higher gold prices. One of the things that, of course, has happened in the Strait of Hormuz, about 15 to 20% of the world's smelting and minting capacity is up in the Strait of Hormuz. So you've got, refineries, mints, smelters in UAE, Abu Dhabi, Saudi. And they've all been starved of metal, of course. So you've had that big demand driver taken out of the market. That's about to change. As soon as we see things settle in the Middle East, I think we're going to see. And what that's done has put a damper on metal prices, including copper, silver, and gold. And particularly those precious metals, given that smelting, refining capacities come offline. So I think once settle down there, and once you see that metal returning back to those countries within and up the Strait of Hormuz, you're going to see a tremendous rebound in prices. Of course, we've sort of seen, silver went as high as $130 an ounce 3 months ago. We're back at $75, $70 an ounce. There's always these monthly things going on. We're coming at the end of options contracts. So we'll find out in the next 24 hours how short and how long people are and what the real metal demand is. But you've got silver as a proxy for everything else that's going on the market. The Shanghai Exchange is paying a $10 premium for silver per ounce at the moment, as opposed to the COMEX in the US. So there's a price differential that's emerged in silver, that you're seeing the same thing in all other metals. I think once things die down, you're going to see a return to this crazy mining boom, what will be the biggest mining boom that the world has ever seen. So we're perfectly set for that. Time will tell. The astonishing thing to me over the 3 months is the fact that you've seen all metal prices, particularly copper, and copper is the proxy. The copper is, we refer to copper as Dr. Copper. It's one of the key indicators as to what's going on globally in terms of growth, and we've seen copper prices up around all-time highs, despite us being as close to what we've ever been. So I think once we come out of this, we're going to see a return to incredibly tight markets for metal and bullish conditions and much higher metal prices.
I have a question, if I may, if it's okay, I can ask.
Yeah.
We are seeing an alarming amount of contracts traded on the derivatives markets in copper. And a quick math shows me that the deliverables are not going to be able to be deliverable because there's just simply not that much copper. And my insights are kind of saying to me, is this going to be a big shortage of copper to be delivered on the physical and paper trades here on the COMEX?
It's interesting. You touch on an interesting and sensitive point for our business. You know, Eric Sprott, legendary billionaire investor here in Canada, founder of Sprott Holdings and Sprott Corporation. You know, Eric's been talking about this for a very long time in terms of the paper trade versus the actual physical and metal trade. You know, I think in the silver market, again, as a proxy for broader metal markets, the paper trade up to 100 times as the metal trade. And so we saw price discovery happen in the last couple of months in the silver market. We've seen that happen in gold, whereby people have traded in that metal to see if it's out there. And there's been a lot of back-end buyers. And what we found is that metal's not there. All of these paper-backed derivatives are a false trade over, and none of them are backed by actual metal. And as soon as that metal demand came in, whereby deliveries, particularly into China, had to happen, we saw prices move incredibly quickly. And we're really just at the start of that. You know, these things typically take about sort of 5 or 6 years to play out. This is really very much, you know, we're not even first in sort of Canadian hockey parlance. We're not through the first period yet. We're probably not far after puck drop in terms of price for metals and where they might be heading. And I think, you know, speaking of where they might be heading, you know, Pierre Lassonde, our friend, he's been talking recently about price discovery in gold. We may well see $18,000 per ounce gold. Now, if you go back 4 years, and a lot of us in our business were talking about, and this gets to the point of the question, supply, there's no supply response coming. We haven't done enough exploration work. We've been in a global mining down to 15 years. China's sought hegemony through this period. You've seen Chinese, if you look at rare earth production as again an indicator of China's determination to furnish itself with critical minerals. You know, some of these critical minerals like gallium, germanium, they have 98% of the refining capacity globally within China. So they've been doing the hard work. They've been buying deposits. They've been developing Africa. The Western world's been, you know, it's left up to a bunch of sort of wily entrepreneurs like myself to supply the world with metals and find those deposits and advance them through studies. And I can tell you there's only a few of us that have been doing it. And so hence we don't see a serious response coming. We think that the world is in serious trouble. If you look at, you know, Cyrus was at one of my projects there a couple of months ago. We've made a major new copper discovery. We're drilling out a very, very large copper resource. Now, I backed myself and my team to bring this into production in record time, but it's going to take us 10 years before you see a response from that major new discovery we've made. So, you know, there's a huge number of challenges, and I think the metal, what we're finding now is that when you need that metal, you call on that metal, it's not out there. So we're in particularly in the West, very, very tough position. China has the ascendancy. China has all of that smelting and refining capacity, and we've been found lacking. Now, we've seen the administration talking very seriously about bringing in price support to support internal developers within the US. I think we're going to have to see that globally, and I think, you know, you look at governments around the world, even NATO governments now, the French government encouraging development within France. So that's a 180-degree change in the past 2 years. So we're a chance, but the work hasn't been done. The discoveries haven't been made. The drilling, the development, the study and development work hasn't been done. So there's going to be a serious lag. I don't think our industry can keep up with the demand that's here right now, let alone the demand that'll be there in the next 5 years. We're you know, in a very, very challenged place. The solution to all of this is, of course, much higher metal prices. And we're starting to see that now, but there is always a lag in development. And I can tell you, governments around the world haven't become more friendly in terms of developing projects. They make a big song and dance. You know, you see that here in Canada. The Ebbie government in British Columbia talking about how they're supporting development of mineral projects. Well, on the ground, we're not seeing it quite as clearly as that. It's very hard to move your project forward, get your permits, mining project. These things, if you go back 20 years ago, it would take you 5 years to bring a project from discovery to production. This time around, it takes about 20 years to do that for most people. So we're in trades.
Yeah. I got one comment I just want to add in. We did get a really good comment from one of our listeners. He says, my uncle's a senior wire guy for a major car company. He buys rolls of copper for his high-end level cables for speakers, amplifiers, etc. He said it's very difficult for him at the moment, very tough to source those metals. So again, I think this is, why we want to talk about these things, because, again, we see, Greg's pointed out a really interesting thing there as far as these, contracts being due, the supply is not there, and that there's going to be a really big need for this. And like you said, probably the only thing that makes sense, it's obviously, supply and demand, right? If there's not enough supply, well, the demand keeps going up, then certainly the prices are going to increase. It's very, very simple economics there. But I just wanted to share that comment. Always good to hear from our viewers and, get that real insights, from what people are actually, experiencing in their work jobs and their daily lives. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, Craig, having lived in Canada for part of my life, the average Canadian, I think, takes it for granted that how well Canadians are at finding discoveries. This is a country that doesn't have necessarily the infrastructure that the United States has. But, why is it that Canadian companies are so good at exploring and so good finding major deposits in their country and even outside of the country? What makes these type of companies so unique?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it's something I haven't thought too much about. There's a historical aspect of it. Australia and Canada are traditionally, and South Africa to an extent as well, traditionally the biggest equity markets, the finance markets for mining stocks. It was London. London blew itself up. The London Stock Exchange, I think, adopted EU rules and regulations, which has been an absolute disaster for investment there. Will continue to do so. I saw one of the companies I'm invested in the other day talking about a London Stock Exchange listing. I really don't know what the point is. There aren't many investors left there, and it's incredibly difficult to do a roadshow through there. The regulations have become such. So that's had an impact, having the London Stock Exchange become less important. Canada's always been a massive market, of course. You've got a vast continent. It's been scraped, it's been glaciated, which is very important. So it's easy to explore in a sense, because you can walk up, and Cyrus was actually on an outcrop on one of my projects there a while back, where we found an outcropping potassically altered mineralized porphyry, which is resulting in a discovery, I think. And so you can do that in Canada. You've got good exposure, but it is a remote place. I think really it's generally historic and money flows. Of course, the US was a fabulous invest in mining once upon a time. And of course, so much of the US was opened up by exploration and mining activity, those great metal gold rushes, the 49ers, and of course then up into Alaska and the Yukon. So you've got some of the world's great mineral districts. If you look at Nevada and the Newmont and Barrick projects there, this is some of the greatest gold deposits that have ever been discovered. So the US really had domination globally, but then of course permitting in the US is on a state-by-state basis, project-by-project basis. The process is to go through litigation often. So that's created a challenge, and I note that the US is now talking about rectifying that. You've got the National Energy Dominance Council, David Cowley, ex-Barrick employee, ex-Newmont employee, who's been the head of the minerals program at the National Energy Dominance Council. So you're seeing a 180-degree turn from the US as well, and under a recognition that the US needs to have internal supply of critical metals. So that's changing. I think there's this sort of new world order is going to shake things out. But it's really that history and good geology. Australia, of course, has had some, another large country, largely barren in much of the country, which aids exploration, and not a large populace. So that's helped those countries as well.
Well, thank you for answering that. I appreciate that. And I think the viewers, they also are quite interested in that. How does a company like yours find deposits? What kind of work do you guys do? I mean, we've seen all the big names out there. We understand they're experienced. They have a lot of equipment. But we are talking about finding, correct me if I'm wrong here, but potentially finding some big deposits out there. I mean, how is it that a company like yours goes out and just looks for these properties? Is there a certain type of mapping? Is it aerial surveying? What kind of stuff is it? Or just great geologists?
Again, fantastic question, Alex. And that sort of takes things back to basics. It's an interesting business. Where you start, of course, much of the world has been mapped geologically. We understand the basics of metallurgy, if you like, where the kinds of terrains, where these deposits occur. I'll give you a couple of examples as a way, some of the discoveries I've been involved in and how we came about those. One of my babies, one of the companies I co-founded with a fellow called Lee Courier and Chris McFadden, is a thing called Next Gen Energy. $1 billion company nowadays. We discovered what is probably the greatest uranium deposit ever discovered in the Athabasca Basin of Canada. And there's a little bit of a hint. The Athabasca Basin of Canada hosts the largest and highest grade uranium deposits globally. So if you're going to go and look for a very large uranium deposit, you go to that terrain. It's a big basin. You go and do the basic work there. You acquire, you buy or stake ground, and then start mapping and doing the basic geological work. Now, we were very fortunate there at Arrow that the next door neighbour on the property across from us, just as we were doing the deal, made a discovery, and that trend that hosts that deposit trended on into our ground. So that was something of a layup. We along that trend drilled it and tested that ground. Another one that I've been involved in, we're at the earliest stages of building what will become the world's largest silver mine in Mexico in our company, Vizsla Silver. Again, if you're going to look for the world's biggest silver deposits, of the billion ounce plus silver districts on the planet, I think 11 of those 14 districts exist in Mexico. So that's a good start. You should go to the Sierra Madre, the Sierra Occidental of Mexico, because that's where the big silver deposits are. And then you start looking around at what you've got. You go prospecting, you drive the roads, you talk to people, you compile all of that satellite imagery, every single bit of geological data you can scrape from the internet, come to an understanding, and then come up with targets and start drilling holes. And that's what we did there. A little bit of a different scenario. Lots of deposits were found on that property, growing all the time. But that's the basic approach. And as a little sort of hint for listeners, I'm all over the internet on this, but size of the prize, cost of the test, and chance of success is how we filter these things. Size of the prize, you've got to go after deposits that are big enough. So world silver deposits like Vizsla Silver has, that's what you should be chasing. So you've got to go where those deposits are. The cost of the test, you don't want to spend too much of your shareholders' money drilling very, very deep holes or flying helicopters around. So ease of exploration access is important. And then chance of success talks about that endowment. You go where the biggest and best deposits are, and you look in those districts for things that people have missed, has been my approach.
I guess my last question is, since we're talking about drilling, any drilling coming up? Is there any announcements that have happened for the viewers that maybe you guys have a drill campaign in the next little while, or maybe it's ongoing as we speak?
Yes, at Vizsla Copper, I'll tell you, now's a great time for people to start looking at the company. The Middle East situation has put a sort of artificial dampener on a lot of companies' share prices. I'd encourage people to look at the gold majors, for example. These companies are throwing off at least double the cash they have historically, month on month or quarter on quarter. We're seeing some astonishing numbers. So I think you're going to see a kickoff of the M&A cycle. You see big acquisitions billion plus acquisitions being made now at crazy premiums. 80. We saw G2 Gold, G Mining acquired GT Gold in Guyana here in the last couple of weeks. They paid an 80% premium, $1 billion premium to acquire that project. So that's about to kick off. At Vizsla Copper, we've got 2 rigs turning at the moment. Our Thera project, Cyrus has been up to Thera. I can tell you we're pulling out big, long sticks of core that look very, very good to me. We've got assays coming in all the time. 2 weeks ago, we put out some fabulous news about a very large half-a-mile intercept at 0.4% copper from the surface there. So that's exciting. We've got another 2 rigs going to our Palmer project in Alaska soon. And speaking of copper, when we drill that deposit, the core comes out of the ground and it looks like crunched up copper wire. So anyway, we'll have 2 rigs drilling that in the next late May, early June, and then we'll have a huge amount of positive news flow, I think, as well. And across some of my other companies, we're busy with we awarded our EPCM contract for Vizsla Silver, so we're moving that project forward. And very excitingly, my business partner, Keith Bodnachuk, we have a company called Kosa Resources. We're drilling out in the Athabasca Basin again. My team there that have discovered 3 deposits and counting. I think we're on to another deposit there. So we've got a rig turning in the Athabasca Basin, drilling for uranium at the moment. Kosa on the TSX venture is worth having a look at as well. There's a lot of, I think, across my companies at the moment, we have about 10 rigs turning. So we're sort of fairly busy here.
Yeah. Well, Craig, it was such a pleasure to meet you. Personally, spent a few days with you up at the Vizsla Copper project there, and to see that firsthand. Of course, we've documented that in one of our earlier YouTube videos. But it's I just find a lot of value here, being able to sit down with you, educate us on the entire market. And again, congratulations to you and your team for the incredible work that you're doing. And just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, it's a real pleasure, and it's an exciting time for markets generally and for the globe generally. But I think we're about to see a return to what my friend Robert Freeland calls the revenge of the miners. A great time to be looking at investing in this sector. It's very early days. It's not too late. When people look at share price charts, they're going to go, whoa, okay, Newmont's up 3 times, Agnico Eagle's up 3 times. How can we invest now? Don't worry about that. They're going up 10 times. This is going to be a huge mining boom.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we put did put the information, in the video description if you're watching on my channel of Vizsla Copper. So guys, make sure that you do your research and go check out that. I've had a chance to, visit there, like I mentioned personally, spend some good time with Craig, and that's why we're able to bring him on the show. And that's why what we're trying to do on these live streams is try to bring you guys the value. We know we have a lot of investors, a lot of people that are interested in saying, look, where should we be looking at? How does these, geopolitics influence the future of markets, and where are there potential opportunities? So again, great time spending with Craig here today. Thank you again for your time. And Alex, always a pleasure to get your insights as well. And gentlemen, I want to just say thank you so much for a wonderful show.
Thanks.
Tremendous. Thanks, Cyrus. Thanks, Alex. Good to see you.
Yeah. All right. Take care. All right. Well, everybody, my name is Cyrus. On behalf of Alex, I just want to say thank you so much for your amazing support. And, as always, you're going to be able to count on this stream, to be able to give you guys the best insights into all things geopolitics. We had a really good section today, Alex, talking about, the big OPEC decision from the UAE. Like you said, I like your call there, basically saying that there's a lot of contracts that need to be delivered. You're going to see, I mentioned earlier as well, 24 new trade deals signed between the UAE and China. Continue to see China's currency gaining a lot more, popularity in the global markets. And honestly, I think that, this is a very important time that all of us are, looking, for the future. So again, a huge thank you to Craig Perry, CEO of Vizsla Copper. And you can check out the links down in my video description where you can learn a little bit more about his company, do your own research on that. But I want to just say that's all I've got for today. And we look forward to seeing you in our next episode of Let's Talk Geopolitics.